Tell me when Bevy Smith, who, from my understanding, grew up in Harlem, knew
Hmm.
that there was more for her. Often people who are destined to be great or have platforms that allow them to speak to people feel that. When did you know?
Wow. Well, first off, I'm so happy to be here. I'm a
Yay.
big fan. You're
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
Um, my origin story is I'm born and raised in Harlem, and that shaped my entire life because I'm from Harlem. First of all, Harlem has its own incredible international legacy. The Harlem Renaissance, what I believe is the greatest cultural renaissance of the 20th century, happens on the streets where I live, where I go to school. So every day in my classroom was Black History. So I didn't have a Black History Month. We learned about Benjamin Banneker and Mary McLeod Bethune and people. We went far beyond Philip, Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman.
Mhm.
So that gives you a really great sense of self, right? Having Black history all around you. Malcolm X preached on Lenox Avenue, and I literally am on Lenox Avenue every day. Um, you know, you can go by the house where Zora Neale Hurston lived. Ralph
Mhm.
Ellison lived until he died in my boyfriend's building.
Mhm.
I mean, this is a man who wrote Invisible Man. So, like, you already have a sense of self when you grow up in a Black enclave. So people like to think of Harlem as like the hood and all of that, which of course it is definitely, a code word urban.
Mhm.
But there's so much greatness and legacy attached to it. So I was always very tapped into that. So that's a big part of who shapes me and makes me. And then my parents, Gus and Geraldine Smith, my parents are amazing people. They come from Jim Crow South. And they had us much older when they were much older in life. So right now, that's nothing for a mom to be 38. But I was born in 1966. So when my mom had me at the age of 38, that was like unheard of. My father was
Mhm.
42 when I was born. And so that shapes me because I live with history every day. So when you're talking about Jim Crow or you're talking about World War II, my father was a World War II veteran. These things shape me. And then because these are people who had us later in life, they really wanted us. We were
Mm.
not a mistake. We were very much wanted. And that means every single weekend, my parents made sure to take us outside of our community and kind of like let us know and expose us to the fact that Harlem is a part of Manhattan. Manhattan is the epicenter of the world. So all of this is yours for the taking. So I grew up very cognizant that I could literally take a train 2 stops and my world could be whatever I wanted it to be. And to this day, which is so phenomenal to me, I have worked in publishing, fashion, television, you know, all these things, and I've never had to leave the confines of Harlem to do it. I've
Mhm.
never had to leave most people they have to leave their homes to make their dreams come true. Not me. So Lou Brown Bevy grows into Big Bev from Uptown, grows into Beverly Smith fashion executive, grows into Bevy Smith TV and radio host and an author and now actress. Ooh.
Mm.
But
Mm.
yeah, so that's the origin story. It really begins with Harlem and Smitty and Lolly. Those are my parents' nicknames.
Y- I want to focus on what you just said. You really had a good sense of self because of how you grew up. Harlem is, and some people may take it for granted if they live there and not really understand it, but it is an epicenter for Black culture. The history is as you walk down the street, as you mentioned, Martin Luther King preaching on Linux. I never considered that because I didn't grow up on in Harlem, but what I also feel and hear is this wonderful sense of confidence, but it's not just confidence, it's this tenacity, it's this ease, this I am all of me. even if you follow Bevy on social, you know what I mean. You are lighthearted, you're funny, you're serious, you're all of these things, and simply unapologetic. And people love to use that term, but foundation is important. How were you able to, whether you wanted to or not, transition from each career path? Because oftentimes we get pigeonholed when people think we can only do one thing. They're like, well, why are you doing that now? You can't
Yeah.
do that. You're supposed to do this.
Mm. Oh yeah, the folks will tell you exactly what they think you should be doing at all times. And sometimes the people mean well. You know what I mean?
Sure.
They see something for you that you perhaps may not see for yourself. That's happened to me my entire life too. People have given me great opportunities that I didn't even know I wanted. So shout out to people who are well-meaning and who see something in someone and say, "Have you ever thought of?" That's
Mhm.
really how the first half of my career happened. It was people seeing gifts in me and saying, "Would you like to?" And me being the person of Smithy and Lolly, which is an optimistic space to live in, and saying, "Well, no, but sounds like a good opportunity. I think I'll give it a try."
Hey.
You know, and that has brought me really amazing blessings and great opportunities. But it wasn't until I turned 38 that I really decided to chart my own course. And that's
Hmm.
really what my book Bevelations really is at the heart of it. It's about that trajectory, that change. And until I was 38 years old, I literally had been given opportunities, and I simply said yes to them. You know how like Shonda Rhimes talked about the year of yes and all.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
had I had, a good spicy 15 years of yes. People were like, would you like to be, the receptionist for a fashion advertising agency like that handles Bottega Veneta and Black Llama Mink? Yes. Would you like to be a media director at an advertising agency that handles Bill Blass and Vidal Sassoon and Vanity Fair magazine and go to Paris? Sure. Would you like to be the fashion and beauty advertising director for Vibe magazine and go all over the world and evangelize about urban culture? Okay. Would you like to come to Rolling Stone magazine and be the only black person in management and make a really great salary and you don't even need to give us a resume? Well,
Hey.
that sounds interesting.
But that
Okay.
makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. You know why? As you're saying this, and I'm saying yes for all these, and by the way, everybody's career is not like that. That is an incredibly blessed career. People seeking you out and you just saying yes, and people telling you, I see you doing this, or a role create. It sounds like a lot of these roles were created to
Hmm.
meet your skill set because it is
Yeah.
so powerful and undeniable. I was going to ask you about your magazine time. How was that for you? Because I feel as if the magazine that was heyday. I don't feel that is the case anymore,
Oh no,
right?
no, no. Magazines don't even exist anymore. Um,
Correct.
but I was there in the heyday. First, I was there as a media director at an advertising agency, so I was on the other side of it. So I was, in charge of buying advertising space and all the best magazines from Vogue to Harper's Bazaar, Vanity Fair, and all that kind of stuff. So that was the first part of me working um, in advertising and being a media director, and that's how I really got to see the inner workings of magazines initially. And then when I went to Vibe magazine, I was the fashion and beauty advertising director. And that my charge was to go forth into the world and break designer fashion in what is essentially a black magazine. It had never been done before. And I'm very proud to say that it's really never been done on the magnitude and the level in which I did it since. When I left Vibe, they never got that kind of advertising again, and you've never really seen like my September issue when I was working at Vibe would be Prada, Gucci,
Yeah.
Armani, Versace, all the brands that you would see in a Vogue or a GQ.
As
And
they
I,
should be.
as they should be. But what people didn't understand when I left Vibe, when they let me go to Rolling Stone, because I didn't even want to leave Vibe, I wanted to stay because it was my home. I simply wanted a different position, but they let me go. They called my bluff. I came in, I said, I have a great opportunity with Rolling Stone magazine. And if you guys, don't let me move into this other space, I think I'm gonna have to take the position. And they said, well, thank you so much for all that you've done at Vibe. And I was like, oh, Carrie, I gagged, girl. I was like, well, I wouldn't, and then I had to make a decision. Do I double back and be like, just playing? Or do, you know what I mean? Or do I move forth and take this job and take this new opportunity? And that's what I did. So, working in publishing and in magazines in the 90s and the early 2000s was heady stuff. It was really quite fabulous. And specifically working at Vibe magazine, I used to call it, I used to say working at Vibe was like that opening scene of the movie Boomerang with Eddie Murphy. You know that opening scene where he's like, well, and like he's Marcus and he's walking into the big advertising
Oh,
agency and he's
okay.
sweating
Oh,
and
oh, okay.
everyone knows him and everybody's black and fabulous and well dressed.
Uh-huh.
That's what it was like coming in the Vibe magazine in the late
Wow.
90s, early 2000s. We were
Wow.
all young, gifted, and black. We had everyone from people that had Ivy League educations to HBCUs to people that had barely a high school education. And we were all working together to uplift the culture. It was a
Yeah.
really special time. And my gig was to go over to Milan and Paris primarily. I went to Rome as well, in London and Florence, but really my gigs were really solidly in Milan and Paris. And to go over to these fashion houses and explain to them why our audience was a viable audience for them to speak to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was some magical stuff that happened,
Yeah.
and
By the way,
some
any job that sends me to Paris, I'm all in. You know what I'm saying? Anybody who
and the
wants
way that he
me,
spends Paris, baby,
listen.
6 times a year, staying at the I used to stay at the Creole and the George Sank and the
Yes.
Coast, and
Mhm.
then and then
The coast,
and
girl, the coast. Don't have me do this bougie black conversation with you. But go ahead. I love the Sank. I love the coast. You ain't got to tell me. I thought it was
yes.
Hotel Sisters, but let's call it that. Whatever. I'm there. Okay. Yeah.
But it was just all these magical moments in time. And then, of course, having entree to work with some of the greatest hip hop artists of
Mhm.
all times. Like, Vibe took Tupac over to Milan with Donatella Versace dressed him. You know what I mean? Like, the stuff that we were able to do to be a
Wait, time
part
out. Tell
of,
me about that. Tell me about that. Tupac
that was
Shakur.
actually that was I knew Tupac because I used to be a I mentioned Big Bev from Uptown. So that had nothing to do with size or anything. That had to do with stature.
Amen.
My name was Big Bev from Uptown, and I was really popping and fabulous in the hip hop hottie scene. So I was
Mhm.
at all the parties, and what's so interesting is Biggie introduced me to Tupac. Tupac was in New York City working on the film. I want to say Above the Rim, I think it was, and Biggie and him they were dear friends before this horrible East Coast West Coast nonsense. And Biggie introduced me to Tupac, and then me and Tupac became friends, really good friends too. And he was an amazing, amazing person. But so I didn't know him from the Vibe era. I knew him from my street era.
Okay. Okay.
And
I
that's
have
the other thing too.
I have a Tupac story. I have a Tupac
Oh,
story. I
go
do.
ahead, tell me.
This is really crazy. I grew up in LA, obviously, Pasadena more specifically, and I used to get my hair done in high school because my mom hated to do my hair. And so I used to go to this hair salon that was also a place where guys got their hair cut. But you know what we look like after we get our hair washed? We look crazy. And I was like,
Right.
I can't keep going here because there's too many dudes sitting over in the corner while they trying to blow out my hair. It was press and curl. Like it was,
Exactly.
we didn't do perms. This is just some woman
No,
stuff.
and weaves and all that kind of stuff.
We
Yeah.
never did. No, it was no, like not even. And Tupac, this is probably a couple of years before. Not, no, it wasn't. But I was in high school. I don't remember when he passed, but I
He
do
passed away in
know.
'97, I want to say.
Okay, so yeah, I was in high school and he was there, and when I got, this is the funny story. When I came from under getting my hair washed and I was sitting down and she was blow drying it out, he was looking at me and he just started laughing at my hair. He was like, so that was one time, right? And I didn't think anything of it.
Okay.
He was with Digital Underground at the time, right? It was like he had
Okay.
that one. He wasn't Tupac.
Okay.
After he was Tupac, I remember uh I had just graduated, I had a fake ID, and I was at it was called was it Ed DeBevick's or Charles Parker? It was like one of these places in LA where people hang out. And he was there and he was having a barbecue. And I remember walking up to him being like, I hear you have my friends charged me because I was a cute little girl. They were like, go over there and ask him where the barbecue is this weekend. I was like, I hear you're going to have a barbecue. And he was like, yeah, give me your phone number. I'll call you and tell you about it. And girl, I ain't had no boyfriend. I don't know nothing about no boys. I said, give me my phone number. Like I was all
Right.
shocked and nervous. He ended up literally, this is a very, very positive, very innocent story, texting me. He ended up saying, hey, where are you? I'm going to come hang out with you. This was the next day. He hung out with me and my homegirl, talked about for 20, 30 minutes. He left because he didn't have time because he realized how young I was and I wasn't living that life yet. I was afraid of boys. You guys fill in the blanks. And so he was really nice and he left. And I remember thinking, wow, that was crazy. He was a nice man. I don't know why people think he's so evil and why they
Yeah.
call him a rapist and say this because he was very respectful and left. And I remember telling this story in more detail, obviously. But I remember telling this story years ago, and I was like, I forgot that I had the opportunity just briefly to spend time with this creative legend who was so smart, so kind, and so nice. I caught him at a
And so
nice
nice.
time.
And so gracious.
So gracious. He was like, okay. He kept it a buck. He was like, so you're not with it. I'm gonna leave. Pleasure to meet you. And I'm out.
He said, I only got one night in town. Break
Baby
up.
doll, are you down? I get around. And I
I'm
was like,
sorry,
I'm not down. I was afraid. I was a kid. I mean, kid. Catch me now.
All right. Come back, Tupac.
And
Come
come
back from
back.
Cuba. We
Catch
can
me
have
now.
a
I'm
conversation.
good and grown. We talking about getting
Right.
naked. Okay. Okay. So
Season.
so you knew him back in the day. They used to be
I know
friends.
that.
That's actually phenomenal that you're telling me that. I had no idea. Like I didn't
Yeah.
know they were friends.
Oh, they were really close friends. Tupac used to but befriended Biggie and like Biggie was broke when Tupac was Tupac and Biggie was and Pac was like generous and kind and you know all the things. He wasn't he was becoming Biggie, but he didn't have all the money. Pac had far more money.
That's
And
so
so,
interesting. Bevy, your stories. So we're going to get to your book eventually, but your stories are legendary. I bet you I could sit around and drink wine with you all night, and you could just tell me some stuff that would blow my mind.
that is why the book is called Lessons from a Mother, Auntie, Bestie, because it's like we gonna go through all of those passages. You know what I mean? I got a million of them. But I always say, Carrie, life is for the living, and
Hmm.
I mentor a lot of young women, and one of the things I always try and tell them because clearly I've done well for myself business wise. I was a successful executive and I'm successful in entertainment. And so I have a lot of young women, especially young black women, who are incredibly driven.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always try and tell them is don't be so hyper focused on working your career that you forget to live.
Hmm. Hmm. You're right. That's the message. I same. I'm on. Same. I'm with you. I love it
Like
because you
live your
live.
life.
You have
Oh
lived.
yeah. And I'm still living.
So you leave, and I'm not saying leave, but how did you transition from Rolling Stones? How was that? Because how was that experience? A lot of times you didn't want to leave Vibe. I appreciate you saying that because a lot of times people think that the white ice is colder. And you went to Rolling Stones reluctantly, even though there
Yeah.
was more money and probably a little more structure involved. How was that transition in leaving Rolling Stones?
Well, so it was interesting because before I went to Vibe, I had never worked in a black environment. I
Mm,
mean, yeah, I never worked in a black environment. It was only at
mm,
Vibe. So I only worked at Vibe for 5 years. So I only had 5 years in my career, my advertising career, which started when I was 18 and ended when I was 38. Only 5 of those years were spent in a black environment.
mm.
So Vibe was like a homecoming experience, but it was very much a sliver of my career. So when I went to Rolling Stone, it was more like of what I was used to. Really quick, funny story. Because I was Big Bev from Uptown, and because I was going to work at a hip hop magazine, the premier one, besides the Source, um, people. were shocked to find out that I had a career. Because when I was a hip hop hottie, Big Bet from Uptown, you didn't lead with your career, your education, none of that. It was a bunch of me and my all my girlfriends. We were all going to amazing schools. Like I went to NYU. All my friends, like went to great schools. Well, we all had careers, but in the club, we
Mhm.
didn't talk about any of that. We
Mm.
were just like bad broads, like coming through, like ow, like you know what I mean. So
What
we
you
didn't
doing?
lead.
What you saying? Yeah.
Yeah,
You didn't have
you
to
know what I
lead
mean?
with that. Unlike today, everybody leads with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we led with like we look good, like where them dollars at. Let's go. Because we also too were very acutely aware of the fact that we had student loans. We had to still look good. So we were definitely leading with an eye of like, who's got the kid? Okay, but that's a whole other story, Carrie. Look, Carrie, listen.
You
That's for the
listen.
upper book.
You look, talk that talk. It's called naked. We led with I need some who paying a bill. What's going on? The rent.
What's
That's
going
it.
on? So there we were, like not, kind of letting people know who we were at 9 to 5.
Okay.
So when I get to Vibe, it's the first time in my life where my personal life and my professional life collide.
Mm,
And I'll never forget, I was at Vibe maybe my first 2 weeks or something, and I came into the conference room for a meeting. And Dame Dash was there. And I knew Dame, like Dame is from Harlem. Dame Dash is from Harlem. For you guys who don't know who Dame Dash is, he's one of the founders of Rockefeller, the
mhm,
Jay-Z
mhm,
empire.
mhm. Him and
So I
Jay-Z
come
were
into
really cool at one point. He was married to Rachel
they were
Roy.
best
They
friends
were
and
best
they
friends.
were, business partners of the nth degree. And, a lot of things that Jay-Z has now and a lot of the things that he's even aware of, a lot of it was informed by Dame Dash. Dame Dash literally introduced Jay Z to art. Like,
Mhm,
that's a whole nother thing. So
mhm.
anyway, I go into the conference room. Dame Dash is there. He like, what the fuck you doing here? I said, oh, I'm the fashion and beauty advertising director. He's like, how the fuck you get that job? I was like, have them bring you by my office later, and I'll explain it to you. But people were like, oh my god. So it was so funny because so many people would be like, oh my god, I thought you were just a party girl. I was like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
The entire
Because
time I
you
was,
that's how it was. You moved so differently. You separated the worlds. No one really knew. That's insane to me. That's insane
yeah,
to me.
yeah, no one knew. And now I look at all my friends, like one of my friends I used to hang out with in the streets. She's like the CMO at Global. What's the concert we always Global Citizen.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
You know what
Wow,
I
that's
mean?
huge.
Like
Wow.
all my friends are doing incredibly well. We all have like really big gigs and shit. Like, but we were outside. Like
Uh-huh.
when I say outside, we was
I
outside.
understand. I understand.
But we was using outside way before y'all was using outside. But
Yeah, I
anyway,
was like, okay, yeah, you like, I've been outside. Y'all just got
I've been
outside.
outside. Okay,
You say you're
I've been
outside, but
out.
you really outside. Okay, go on.
Yeah, exactly. So we was outside. And so when I was at Rolling Stone, I knew what it was gonna be. But the difference was is that I had changed. I had been in an environment where I didn't have to explain why my hairstyles changed. I had been in
Mm,
an environment where I didn't have to explain to people, why 4th of July wasn't a big deal for me. I was used to not being in an environment where I was the only one. And so when I go back to Rolling Stone, it's back to business as usual. But I was different. And so that place was never going to hold me. So I came in, I did an amazing, amazing job. I hit all my numbers. And when I got my bonus check and I deposited it in the bank and I waited for it to clear, and then I resigned.
why?
Well, because I knew I didn't want to do that any longer. You know what I
Mm,
mean? And so, and I certainly didn't want to do it at a place like Rolling Stone, which was really devoid of any kind of respect
like,
for Black culture, which is in turn pop culture, right?
mhm, mhm,
They would rather put a dead Beatle on the cover than Beyonce, and I just
mm,
was like, yeah, this doesn't make sense
mhm.
to me. Um, and I didn't want to be in a space like that. Not
Mhm.
after having been in the mecca of like black excellence, like Vibe is
I
like, I
just
don't
and
want to
again, I applaud you because I'm taking it back to the origin story, the genesis. You knew who you were and you couldn't compromise it, and it didn't feel authentic to who you were in that
no.
moment after you had worked at Vibe. I appreciate that. People will tell you all the time, go here because it's bigger in the name. And everybody needs a name and a title on your resume. You absolutely do. But when you
Yeah,
realize it doesn't fit the brand of who you are, you have to make moves. What did you do
yeah.
next?
Oh, that's when I quit my job to become the thing that I am now. So I literally, when I resigned, I told my boss, he said, wait a minute, you're on the fast track to become a publisher. Like you have such a great career trajectory. Like, don't leave. And I was like, no, I have to. And he's like, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to write and I'm going to sing. I'm going to dance. I'm going to act. I'm going to juggle. I'm going to be a fire eater. I'm going to jump out of planes. And he looked at me. He said, you're having a midlife crisis. I was 38 years old at the time. I was like, am I having a. I said, first of all, black people don't have midlife crisis. Like, we can't afford to have a midlife crisis.
Well, we crisising all the time, damn it. But go
Right.
on.
So I was like, no. And when I quit, that's when I went on my journey of trying to become a TV personality. And I took, well, first I did the sepia version of Eat, Pray, Love. I went to Zambia. No, I went to Zambia, South Africa, Brazil, Costa Rica. And I just like kind of immersed myself in just my kind of cultural diaspora like travel and wash that corporate self off of me. And then when I came back, I took all kinds of classes: improv classes, acting classes, photography classes, DJ classes, writing classes, anything that I'd ever been interested in. I was like, okay, I want to try and apply myself. I want to get some kind of information about it. And so I did all of that. And then Vibe called me back and I said, well, I'm not interested in having a job. And I certainly don't want the job that I once had. And they said, "Well, you want to do?" I said, "Well, I want to write and I want to do whenever you guys have someone who has to go on TV and talk about the brand, I want to be that person." And so they gave me an opportunity, and that's how I started building my reel. And that
Mm,
was how I started writing. And then I started writing for Paper Magazine and Interview Magazine and Glamour and Essence and all these things. And I did a lot of great work in that time. And in between all of that, because Vibe only lasted for like maybe a year, and then there was a regime change. The second time I was at Vibe as the as a fashion editor at large. Which, by the way, guys, I don't even know if these positions still exist, but at large literally means you don't have to come into the office, and you still get a check. Which now, like, oh, that's what everyone does. But I'm telling you, it was just novel and unheard of back then. It was amazing. So I just kind of, did all these things, and then the Vibe gig ended, and then I went broke. I was
mm.
broke from 40 to 45.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
No, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing
Okay. Okay.
because I was broke, but I had a really amazing time. Was broke but not broken. I was broke,
Mm,
but the chapter in my book is called Broke but Blissful. So I literally took that time to really do all the things I wanted to do. And I was successful in it. I was on BT, I was on E, I was on VH1 doing all these talking head things, again, building up the reel. And I was writing for all these publications. So I'm doing everything I want to do, but the money, it doesn't match up yet. And the rubber hit the road like maybe about 3 years into the journey when I was really bad broke and I couldn't even pay my rent. And I was going to housing court and different things like that. And then I decided to create Dinner with Bevy, which is my business that I created where I connected celebrities with high end luxury fashion brands and fashion magazines. And I did dinners for everyone from Idris Elba to Kerry Washington to Pharrell. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So I was able to become an accidental entrepreneur. I would have never become an entrepreneur if I hadn't been broke.
mhm,
So that gave me even more. So I always tell people like everything is as it should be. Everything is as it should be. Like again, if I had not gone broke, I would have never known how resilient I was. I would have never known that I could actually eat what I kill because it's a different type of muscle that you have to use when you don't know where your money is coming from.
Talk about it.
And when you know that you can actually go out and go get some money, get up, get out and get something, that gives you a whole nother sense of confidence, sense of self. So I'm always very grateful. Also, too, when I look back on all the dinner with Bevy gave me, which dinner with Bevy is the reason why now when I do my radio show Bevelations, people want to come and talk to me because they know me from Dinner with Bevy. Like I have a relationship with Kerry Washington because of Dinner with Bevy. You know, Pharrell, Dinner with Bevy. He was my first guest on my radio show. Pharrell, like all these people, because they know me from. I'm the lady who did Dinner with Bevy. I'm the lady who does that, and trust me. So if I hadn't done that, would my radio show be a Gracie Award winning radio show? Would I be able to get the kind of guests that I get? I don't know.
I think not. I love all of
Yeah.
this. I didn't want to cut you off. I love all of this. It's inspiring. You said broke but blissful.
Yeah.
I think in the moments when we do have to hustle, because all I hear is your hustle hand is hard. You do it differently. And
Okay,
and
wait. So wait. So now check this one out.
uh-huh.
Check this out, Karen.
Yeah.
I don't believe in hustle.
Oh, tell me.
Okay. So what I was doing was not hustling. Let me tell you why it wasn't a hustle.
Tell me.
I was being strategic because everything that I did connected me to where I wanted to end up.
So why do you not call it consider that a hustle?
Because hustle is you do whatever it takes to get that money. How many times have you heard people say they going after the bag?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't go after the bag.
It wasn't the
I'm
money for you.
strategic.
You were creating the brand of what you wanted to do in the life in which you wanted to live. I see. I see.
And
Okay.
a hustle means that I would have taken so many other jobs,
Which you didn't.
which I didn't. If I was just hustling to make money, I wouldn't have been broke for 7 years,
Yeah.
for 5 years. I would have, because I had a lot of opportunities coming my way.
Can I
Excuse me,
ask you
I
a
was so
question?
well established.
You're
Mhm.
very specific about the years. So what happened at the end of the 5th year? Because you're like, for 5 years, I was broke for 5 exact years. For 5 exact years, you know you were broke. What happened year 6?
But it was 7 years from when I quit Rolling Stone. So 7 years is the number
Mm.
of seven is the number of completion. But I
Mhm.
had money still for 2 years of the journey, but so I'm 5 years broke. So at that fifth year, when I first quit Rolling Stone, I get an opportunity from Bravo to be a co-host for the Tim Gunn show.
Mhm. You said no.
And Andy Cohen at this point is a TV executive, not a TV personality. And a friend of mine, a white gay friend of mine, was on Fire Island, which is a white gay enclave in New York City. And they're talking, and he's like, Andy, what are you working on? He's like, oh, I'm trying to find someone to co-host the Tim Gunn show. I need a woman who's funny and knows fashion. He's like, my friend Bevy Smith just quit her job in fashion and wants to do TV. I go on the audition on a Monday. I get the contract on a Wednesday. I'm a
Wow.
business. Yeah, because I slayed that audition. I test very well, by the way. I'm a great test taker. So, just in life, I've always been a great test
Oh,
taker. So I
no.
get the
We
contract,
lost her.
and because I'm an
Guys.
executress, I see how bad the contract is.
Okay.
And I literally am like, this is really bad to my lawyer. And my lawyer is like, okay, I'll go back and try and negotiate. Well, Bravo was like, no, it is what it is. And you either take it or we're going to move on. My lawyer says, Bevy, they're not willing to budge. You know, we don't have a choice. I said, well, we always have a choice. Go back and tell them we're not going to do it. He goes back and tells them we're not going to do it. They gag. And then Andy Cohen's office calls me and says, Andy would like to meet with you. And it was him and his boss. And I go in and I have on literally probably $10,000 worth of clothes. Like I'm like Missoni and Goyard and all the things, darling. I'm looking like, and this is like literally in 2005. So I'm like, oh, 2006. So I'm like done. Whoa. So I'm coming in looking like fashion. Now he says you're even better in real life than you are on tape. we're going to work together. And for 7 years, Andy put me in pilots. He put me on different shows, different things. He was just trying to find a fit. And so now we fast forward to that end of the 5th year. My friend is in town, wants to go and see Watch What Happens Live. I call Andy, I say, she wants to come. He's like, the clubhouse is packed, but if you'll come and bartend for me on the show, I'll give you a ticket, a seat for your friend. I have a holding deal with BET. I'm not
Mm,
supposed to be doing any other TV for anyone else.
mhm.
So I'm like, them BET executives ain't gonna be watching no Watch What Happens Live. So I go and do it. When I get done with the show, Andy says, I know what I want to do with you. I have a show with Derek J and Miss Lawrence from Real Housewives, and I want to do a fashion commentary show. And that's how Fashion Queens came to be.
Mm.
And that's what broke my broke period in my life. And I was knock wood.
Yeah.
God is my witness. Yeah, we never went back. We never went back to housing court.
Oh,
I still have a
man.
tax problem, but I never went back to housing court. But listen, Carrie, and I want to say this to our people too. We fear the wrong stuff.
Mhm.
If rich people, I've never had to do a bankruptcy, but I'm gonna tell y'all this: bankruptcy for rich people and for all people should be looked upon as restructuring debt.
Mhm.
Second, a tax problem is means that instead of them holding your money and giving you back your money that you already paid into it, and it was an interest-free loan to the IRS, now it means that you owe them some money.
Mhm.
And as long as you have a conversation with them, namaste, girl.
No.
Don't worry about
Yo,
that.
I need everybody who owes the government some money, just send them a message talking about namaste. No, I'm kidding. I know, but I'm with you. I am with you on the idea of why do I give you my money so you can hold on to it to give it back to me? I don't believe in that
Yeah.
anymore. But
No, so
that's also an education that we have to start to learn when we get to as we start to make money. People aren't comfortable with that. Listen. When I started making money, my accountant would pay all my stuff up front, and I'm like, hold on. Why are you paying all of my bills all at once on time? Paying all of them in full amounts. I don't understand that. I remember I said it's a cultural thing. I got used to it, but it was a
right.
cultural thing. And so you're right.
No,
It's a lesson.
but it's a thing of like, if you look at all the most successful people, when you read their, because I love biographies. When you read biographies of really successful people, they don't fret over the same things
No,
that we're taught to fret over because they know that as long as you have the ability to make money, which people like you and I have the ability to have multiple revenue streams,
sure.
it's fine.
Yeah.
You don't get one check.
You listen. And that's what COVID is teaching everybody else, this next generation. You have to have
Mhm.
multiple revenue streams. People will they will let you quiet quit or quietly fire you, and you'll look up and you'll be dependent on one entity, and it's impossible. That's why I
It's
am a
impossible.
big it's impossible, not in this day and age, not in this day and it's also a freedom. It helps you move with the freedom that you cannot experience if you're beholden to one place. You understand what I'm talking
Amen.
about? So
Yeah, of
then you
course.
get this show. Oh my goodness. This is such a great story. I love it. Okay. So go on. And I love Andy for this for you. Go on.
Yeah, so I get the show. It does incredibly well. We go on for 3 seasons. It gets canceled, and then Andy gets a deal with Sirius XM, and he calls me and says, "Have you ever thought about doing radio?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, whatever." He's like, "Would you want to do radio on my network? I'm doing on Sirius XM." I'm like, "As long as I don't have to do fashion." He's like, you can do whatever you want on it. Like, whatever. It should be like your Twitter feed where you talk about anything and everything. I said, great. So September 14th will be my 7th anniversary of being on Radio Andy. And I'm very proud that we won a Gracie Award in 2020. And it's just like and we've had amazing, incredible interviews. Like my Usher interview just got picked up. My John Boyega interview just got picked up.
I
I
love
mean, it's
that.
just been incredibly it's been a life-changing moment for me to have that kind of a show, and to be able to have great conversations, and to be able to talk about everything from fashion to pop culture to politics to health disparities to income inequality. I do all these things on one show, and sometimes on one actual episode. I go everywhere that I
And
want to
you're
go.
and you're allowed to, because you are all those things, because you have that breath, you have that range, and you should not be limited. I am a big believer in
Yeah,
that. You can't tell me I
yeah,
can only do one thing.
yeah. I know.
Congratulations on 7 years. Congratulations on being your true self and being so damn comfortable in your skin. It's something probably you take for granted, but it is it's a journey for most. So God is just a beautiful thing.
Thank you, but it's my mom. So I,
Mm.
I just did a TED talk, and I guess it was April. And I talk a lot about my mother in the TED talk. And my mother just suffered 2 strokes on August 6th. And she's 94 years old. And she is still here, and she is still wonderfully herself, even without even with very limited speech,
Mhm.
and virtually no mobility on one side of her body, but she is present. And my mother is still beautiful and vibrant. And the people in the rehab are like, we love to come see your mother. She has the best smile. She always has the best outlook. She's always optimistic. She's always cheerful. That's my mother. And I grew up in a household with a mother and a father who told me how beautiful I was, who
Mm.
told me how smart I was, who really just encouraged and stroked it. Like we were like loved and cared for children. And I think that that's the reason why I can go out into the world and be the way I am, be very gracious and giving, because I don't come from a place of stress and strife.
Yeah.
All my life, I didn't have to fight.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? I
Mhm.
was loved and people gave me stuff, but I don't take that for granted.
Mhm.
I know it's a blessing, so then that means I have to be a blessing to others.
Amen. I receive all of that. You are love, and you came from love. Shout out to your parents. Thank God they did that. This is another example of what happens when you raise good babies. You see what happened? They turn into strong people who love themselves.
Yeah,
Um,
they can
where
love others.
where can we get your book?
Mm. Everywhere, girl. I just was in Barnes and Nobles, girl. They got into Barnes and Nobles. They got to Amazon, all the local bookstores. I also want to make sure that people watch my TED Talk. My TED Talk went to 2 million in like
Wow.
4 months. 2 million views
Wow.
in 4 months.
Wow, wow, wow,
And,
wow, wow. That's
and
huge.
Carrie, yeah, and Carrie, can I just tell you? I know we don't have much time. I'm gonna tell you this real quick.
Okay.
I got my TED Talk through doing the things that I love to do. I have a whole symposium called Life with Vision. And I did a Life with Vision in 2021. And the woman who came to it in 2015 came back. And when I was done, she said, "You know, Bevy, this is a TED Talk." And I said, "Oh, yeah, great." She's like, "I work at TED." I said, "Oh, okay." She said, "I think you should do a TED Talk. Do you mind if I put your name in the hat?" I said, "Okay." She put my name in the hat. They asked me what I want to talk about. I sent them over all my credentials and things. And they asked me to do a TED Talk, main stage. Most
Mm.
people never get the main stage first time.
Yeah, no,
Most
they
people,
TEDx.
and no disrespect to nobody,
Nothing's wrong with TED. I did a TEDx, so nothing's wrong with
yeah,
it. But you're right.
but the doll went straight to the main event. The other thing,
Mm,
when
mm,
my
mm.
coach worked with me, my coach said, when you have to go in front of the board of the TED people to let them hear your final speech, she said, they usually have a lot of comments. Don't worry about it. Will work, whatever they say. When I was done, the man who runs TED said, "That's a perfect TED talk. I have no notes.
Wow. Wow, wow.
No notes."
Chills just right here on my arm, just right now. You can't see them. Wow. Wow.
And then last and final thing about the TED talk, Bill Gates was on my it was in my pod. So I like to say Bill Gates opened up for me.
Well, he sure enough did. He sure enough did, because it's
Yeah.
only apropos. You told him to get out there and make sure he did it right. Warm him up for me, and I'm gonna come on
Right.
next.
Warm them up for me, Billy. Yeah. But
Bevelations. Give me the rest of the title. Bevelations.
Revelations, lessons from a mother, Auntie Bessie. You see it back there.
Mother, Auntie, Bestie.
That, I'm gonna tell them real quick what mother is. Mother is what my gay kids call me.
Uh-huh.
Auntie is what anyone under 35 can call me. If you older than that, don't call me auntie. I'm gonna
Hello.
move you into the little sister or into the bestie category.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
bestie is for all the women who watch me on TV and say, "Oh my God, I want to have drinks with you. I want to go on vacation with you. I want to hang." That's you in the bestie category. So that's what it is. So my book is really about, me going through this metamorphosis of all these different personas that I hung on to for so many years, and
Mhm.
then releasing them.